all for joining us at this afternoon's plenary. My name is Beth Clark. I'm Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at World Education Services. We're a nonprofit social enterprise that's dedicated to the success of immigrants, refugees, and international students. We're best known for our academic credential evaluations, which is how many of you in the room will know us. But we're also known for working at the intersection of education, workforce development, policy, advocacy, and philanthropy to help newcomers succeed in Canada. And we're really grateful to partner with so many people and organizations that are in the room today. So it's really nice to look around and see so many familiar faces. As we talk about inclusive collaboration for collective impact, I think we all recognize the value that partnership brings and that we really can't be truly effective when we work alone. And that also includes public institutions. And I think that's a group that sometimes we in the sector have, we can stay in our silos and stay in the spaces that we know. And I think sometimes we struggle to understand as a group how to really collaborate effectively with public institutions. So it's my honor to be able to moderate the panel today. For those of you who may have been expecting to see Shamira Madani, I apologize on her behalf that she's not able to be here with us today. Unfortunately, she had a death in the family, so you've got me yet again. And I'm hopefully going to do this topic justice this afternoon. But today we're going to be hearing from our expert panelists about how the settlement sector and public institutions can be better partners to one another. Just for some housekeeping, the session is going to run until 3 o'clock. Each panelist is going to present for up to 14 minutes. I'm going to really try hard to keep everyone on time. I will mention, if any of you don't have listening devices yet, 2 of our panelists are going to be presenting in French. We will have the presentations in French and English, but please get some listening devices if needed. And our panelists today, we're really pleased to have with us Patricia Garvey, Swiss manager of the British Columbia Francophone School Board, Anthony Miron, a solution explorer from Hearst University, and I have to say I love the title. It's a great job title. I'd love to steal that. Karen Cumberland, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives with Community Outreach for the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction. And our session today is sponsored by the Diversity Institute and the Future Skills Center, so really grateful for their support. And we're now going to see a brief message from our sponsors, so if the AV team can play the video, that would be great. Okay, thank you for playing the video. And of course, I've failed my first job as moderator, which is introducing Brady. My goodness. So Brady Schnell, the Economic Development Officer of Medicine Hat Economic Development. So my apologies, Brady. I'm going to owe you a drink afterwards. Okay, so do submit questions on Slido as we go through, because we are going to be saving time at the end for Q&A, and we want to make sure to give plenty of time for that. So now I'm going to turn this over to Patricia Garvey to kick us off.
Je vais d'abord étudier la technique. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci.
Good day to you all. Thank you very much for having invited me today to this plenary session. Today, we're going to talk about collaboration amongst Swiss services and the school board, the Francophone School Board in BC. So just to set the stage for our group, we have been in existence ever since 1975. We have 47 schools in the province, a virtual school, and about 6,400 students, even a bit more because we get new students all the time. So I'm not going to go through all of the programs. It's a public program that goes from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. So our students, who are they? They are students who come from all around the world. And this is the richness. We've got Francophone students from Francophone countries and students who come from Francophone provinces, families who come from other countries. And this is where their entry point was in a Francophone province, and therefore they go to school in French. So their migration in the West means that they have access to our schools. The Francophonie in BC is something that truly brings us together. And this is what represents our diversity, and that's why it's rich. The people who come here find Francophone communities with many services offered outside with these 40 different organizations around the province, and one Francophone school board. It does exist, so we're very proud of it, and that is one of our advantages. So our services, these services, the Swiss services, of course you know about them because I'm speaking to my friends who are part of the sector. We have many different types of services. We have people who work with families and students in the elementary level, and then people who take care of teens, and they conduct activities like support groups for youth, and we also have leadership for teens in school. We are obviously funded by IRCC. We'd like to thank them, and I hope that this service becomes an essential service, so that would be very nice. Our schools are very much everywhere in the province. As you can see here, it is a large territory. We offer services in the Greater Vancouver area, and this is where we have the most number of immigrants, so there are more in-person services, but we also serve all schools. If there's one immigrant family that comes to the north, well, at that point, we do Zoom calls, so we have virtual meetings. We meet the team at the school to speak with them with everything has to do with the intercultural aspects and to support them in their in their arrival. And also the connection that we've made with the Francophone community. We try to connect our families with the local Francophone associations. So you know all of the elements of our program. It's definitely similar to yours, but I'd like to highlight the evaluation of needs. We have about, well, we have many people. 60% of people who come are very vulnerable. So their need evaluation or assessment is very important. It's done as soon as they come to the school, which is a plus because school acts as an anchor, and we are able to connect to these people directly with the links. So we also do quite a bit on orientation, community connection, so connecting them to their community, not only the Francophone community, but also the Anglophone community. Our support services are also very well adapted. We also have the ability to offer services that is very specific. Every family is unique. Their migration path has been unique, so we are going to meet with them one-to-one. So maybe they're 40 minutes away by bus, so it's difficult for us to bring together all parents, for us to have group sessions. We do conduct some group sessions, but it is a lot of one-on-one, which is also very beneficial. So we also have support for employment. We don't have a huge contract on that. It's really for teens who need to find a summer or weekend job, and we're able to help them with that. Obviously, what we want to do is for our clients to receive information that is appropriate and that meets their needs so that they feel supported in their immigration pathway and for them to be able to adapt into this new pathway, this environment. We want them to have links in different areas of the community. They obviously participate in school life. And of course, people who work in schools, you know that this is our job, is to have families integrate, for them to understand, and to use the schools as an anchor so that they can have access to services throughout the province. We want them to be familiar with Canada, and of course you know that. And what is important for us, our community in a minority situation, is their contribution. All Francophone immigrant families make this community even more vibrant. And they support, they help the Francophone community, so that is essential. Our services are integrated school services. Well, we're here to talk about how things occur in school. Well, we truly work in schools at all times, and it's based on good collaboration. I must say that it's taken some time. It's 17 years that we're there, so it's taken some time before people have understood our work, before they've accepted that we can be there at the table as well. So now I can say that we are well established, and that's good. We make sure that students and parents are at the heart of our work. We want to include parents because that's also important. We collaborate with the school staff based on student and family needs. We talk about bridging the community and school. And that's more important for us because given that schools are regional, parents are isolated and they don't have the opportunity to come every day to school to see their children, to meet others. So we go to them to bring them to the school. We support quite a bit at the beginning so that they are able to understand how to go to school by bus if that's the need, or for them to meet other families. We have regular meetings with members of the school, the team at school. In our province, all specialized services are integrated at school, be it for speech therapy or counseling or advisors. So we will be at the table. And I think it's important because we add a part of the puzzle that deals with family issues, and we also talk about what the family allows us to share, of course. But this gives us an optic that's quite different because we want to ensure that our students, we call them our students because we like to protect them, but we want to make sure that our students are offered all the services that they need. We also participate in support plans or learning plans. And this is very important for us to be able to find organizations or support that would be outside. So if a student has issues, we need to find an advisor or a therapist or a tutor and to get funding to support the family. And so we truly work with the community on that aspect as well. We also conduct activities, things related to communication so we can prepare parents. Now, I always say that if you come, you'll get a memo. Let's say you're a refugee and you come to a school and you receive a memo that says, look, we're going to have a pajama day in the gym and we're going to eat popcorn. Now, even myself, as a French person, I wouldn't have understood what that meant because it doesn't exist. This is a North American cultural thing. So it's important to explain parents all of this. These are complex things sometimes. Leadership camps, for example, your child will go for 3 days in the woods. Maybe there'll be bears around there, but don't worry, we'll take care of them. So we always want to make sure that we are based in an approach that takes into account trauma. Some families have a hard time to send their kids away and separate themselves and send them to leadership camps because it triggers them. So what is good, what we do is that we adapt ourselves to the family and to see where they're at. So if they're not ready this year, we won't push them. We want to make sure that they are comfortable. And once that they're well settled and they see how things operate, they'll be able to maybe send their child to an activity and not necessarily have them stay at home. We also support parents throughout the entire process. It may be psychoeducation assessments, everything about mental health, everything to do with well-being. So questions like, well, what do we need, especially with our teens? Now, it's not always easy because we have critical situations where we need for parents to understand that if their child has suicidal thoughts, they need support. And so this requires quite a bit of work. So that is what we do at the school. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I will continue. So what is working well? The fact that the school acts as an anchor. As soon as they're registered, or even before their registration, because our colleagues in the community will call us and tell us, look, we have a family that needs to be registered at your school, and we start the welcome process. And that is very important. It's important in all levels and everywhere in the school, because we want to truly accept and welcome them. Now, we have permanent people at school, so let's say you work 5 days in the same school. That's great, because they'll be the same person on the ground. They'll be able to be there. The staff as well at school, they understand that we're always present, so they can come and ask us questions. Even when I worked in schools before this position, I was going to speak with all teachers before the start of the class to see how things were going. And this helps to ensure that the school is there to look after the students. So I've talked about the personalized services. And I think everybody here is here to advocate for rights. We talk about anti-racism. We want to make sure that people are aware of their biases. And I like this picture, creativity over judgment. And because it's about being curious. Our directed services are personalized and adapted to our clients, obviously. We are part of this school team. We have access to all technological platforms, which enables us to support families to understand these platforms. So we have access to their scores. They will also define homework. Everything's become very tech, and sometimes it's very difficult for families. So we want to be able to support them, and that's very important. Also, we talk a lot about intercultural communication. Teachers often ask me, look, I'd like to know this child comes from this country. What do you know about that country? So look, I'm not a world encyclopedia, but we can ask them questions, ask the child questions, and that's the only way to learn. Maybe you can ask them how it was at their school. And oftentimes teachers are quite intimidated by asking, and that may be the case for parents and youth. But so we need to be curious, and we need to ensure we do something in the class and say, look, there are some schools that are different around the world, and so let's examine. So let's remain curious, and that is very important. We also do quite a bit of raising awareness with presentations. We do this to the entire staff. We talk about our services, be it for support people, new teachers, the whole gamut. We continue to collaborate for all different meetings, even high school students. Oftentimes we have youth who come to see us and they're not comfortable to go speak to their teachers, so we support them, and we do coaching as well. We want to help them. We also want to help parents. It's about, calling things into question is not necessarily natural for people. Sometimes kids, we go to school and they were quite separate from parents, but we want them to participate in what happens at school. Now, support for staff, everything to do with communication is important, right? Sometimes teachers say, well, look, they're not answering my emails. So I said, well, maybe you should pick up the phone. Sometimes you need to contact them directly because email is difficult. Maybe they don't have internet at home. Maybe they don't have a computer. So that's why it's very important for them to truly find a way for them to be connected. And that's what I encourage the most, is to go out and meet the families and to begin to discuss this with them. It's not always the other people who need to create that bridge. We have a very holistic approach, and we really give voice to our families. And this is the last picture that I'm going to leave you with. I'm going to leave you read it because it's something that is very interesting for you to reflect on. Thank you so much. Anthony, you have the floor.
En attendant, bonjour tout le monde.
Meanwhile, hello. First off, it is a true privilege to talk about this in front of so many people around the country who work in different fields.
To talk in front of so many people from across all the country and in different sectors.
So, as I was saying, it's a true privilege to be here.
Il semblerait que c'est correct. It's all good. There's one in French and one in English this way. Perfect. OK, on va l'avoir. OK, aujourd'hui, je vais...
So today, I'd like to talk to you about collaboration between the University of Hearst and the settlement sector. I wanted to begin by giving you a historical view. So just to contextualize the things, the organizations that I represent today are somewhat difficult to understand. Even myself, I get mixed up. But I will begin about talking about who I am, so that you understand the environment that we are working in. So who am I? Anthony Miron. I come from Hearst in the northern part of Ontario. Raise your hand. Who has already been to Hearst? Well, I see more hands than I thought, so about 10 people, maybe even more. Well, Hearst in the northern part of Ontario, just to give you an idea of where we are on the map, here you go. Here is a map of the main points that we know in Ontario, Toronto and Ottawa. And to show you where Hearst is, I need more space, of course. Here you go. There you have it. Hearst, in comparison to Toronto and Ottawa, 10 hours by car from Toronto, and 12 hours to Winnipeg, 12 hours to Montreal, just to give you an idea. Now, what distinguishes the northern part of Ontario from the rest of the province? Well, I mentioned a few things here. So the distance from the major centers, I talked about this with my map here. We are a Francophone group in a minority situation. Just to show you that Hearst, there are about 5,000 people. Well, yes, 5,000 in population, but most people are Francophones in a province where there is 11% of people who can hold a conversation in French. So that just sets the stage for where we're at in the northern part. And I talked to you about this small population. Yes, 5,000 people. That means there are fewer services, fewer organizations, and fewer services. So individually speaking, we need to be more of a generalist. And oftentimes we see that people that you meet in the northern part wear many hats, even myself. Sometimes I wear many different hats. And I wanted to bring them all with me today, but I thought, it's going to be too expensive in my luggage, and I won't be able to balance all of the hats on my head. Now, what organization do I represent today? Well, the University of Hearst. What and who is University of Hearst? I could talk to you about this for hours on end, but I'm going to just show you this in one slide. We are a university in the northern part of Ontario with 3 campuses, 3 small classes, because the pool of students is much lower than it is in other parts of the province. To give you an idea, we have about 25 students per class. And I'm going to talk to you about our 2014 reform, Working for Sustainability. We therefore changed the structure of our courses. So we have courses, one course at a time for 3 weeks. And so this is how we set ourselves apart. We offer opportunities for experimental learning, mandatory stage or internships in all of our programs, and international focus. Well, we look at recruitment in countries where we speak French. In 2014, we activated our recruitment machine in Europe and in Africa, and it's mainly in the western part of Africa where we've had more success. In Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, that's where we get most of our students internationally. So here you have a picture that shows us the growth of the number of international students. We started at 0 in 2014, and we've gone all the way up. And we see the increase every year. In 2020, obviously something happened in the spring. I don't remember what happened exactly, but now I represent, yes, the University of Hearst, but I also represent the group Innovanor. This is an organization, a not-for-profit, distinct group from the University of Hearst, and you'll see that there are some parallels to draw between the two groups. So the mission of the group is to offer services to our communities in areas related to the academic programs of the University of Hearst. The Innovanor group is the umbrella group that brings together the different integration centers throughout the university. And these are areas where university students can do their internship, for example, in economic development and through CREDEC and psychology, for example. Intervention and psychosocial analysis is through the Labelle Center, and then heritage questions with the organization. One of our projects that we have is the management of services in the northeastern part of Ontario. Yes, we have settlement services in the northern part of Ontario between Hearst and Smooth Rock Falls ever since 2020. And this project was born from the economic corporations of the region that have come together. And they said, look, we don't have many services for immigration. Actually, there aren't any even. So we need to do something. So KIDEX and ASSI, therefore, presented a subsidy request with IRCC. And yes, we received the funds for settlement services. So there's the context for you. I've got a long list, right? So here I'm at the question that we have asked me to answer. How does the University of Hearst collaborate with the settlement sector? So you see that University of Hearst serves international students and settlement services in the northeast part of the Ontario, permanent and refugee. This was not our vision at the beginning. At the beginning of university, we said, look, we want to have settlement services that can offer service and integration services for our students, because most people come from the western part of Africa, and I could tell you a personal story. When my wife and I, we went to get one of the students at the Timmins Airport, over the 3-hour car ride, this student was telling us that it was 18 degrees during winter in Senegal. And we said, look, this guy is not ready. He's not ready for what was about to happen. All this to tell you that we wanted to offer settlement services for university students, but we discovered through our work that these students weren't admissible to settlement services that were offered and funded by IRCC. So at first blush, the clients from both organizations, it was not, they weren't on the same path. Well, what was the word that I was thinking for that, to describe that? Let me just find it. Not compatible, that's it. So we said, this is not logical that we work in silos from our own side and to work in the immigration file of a section in the northern part of Ontario. We needed to collaborate one way or another. So I did a word cloud here that shows a little bit the collaboration efforts that occurred between the two organizations. There you have it. In other words, we discovered that there were many ways that we could collaborate. And there are 6 different types of collaboration between our two organizations. Here you have them. I'll go over one at a time to give you concrete examples as best I can. So co-organization of events for students at the university and for clients of settlement services. Here we're talking about co-organization of workshops for them, maybe on taxes or maybe on government services. There are some things that don't change from one client to another. Then information on permanent residency and citizenship. And then musical evenings that would be cultural related with meals and conversations. That was very popular and it worked very well to bring people together. And then you have workshops on the winter in the northern part of Ontario, how to get ready for winter. And that is something that is for every person. And then different activities for skating and playing on snow. I'm going to show you a picture here on the next page. Here's the activity that we have. Maybe you might know this is led by the Support Immigration Group, the team that's sitting right here with Marie-Josée. And they organized the 2nd edition this year. And what we see here on the picture, that there are clients from settlement services and University of the Hearst students of this university. It is a huge success every time we organize this. What it is an initiative for camping through excursions in canoe in the forest, survival services in the forest, and games for the children. And this is something that's very important in our region. The next picture here, you have another example of a activity that is good for students and clients. We have cross-country skiing, and because we had to take advantage of the wintertime, right? And here you have the advantage that everyone is up and no one's fallen. Now, the co-organization of events for employers. Together, we've organized different presentations to demystify the status of immigration. The employers in our region hire international people and don't really understand the difference between the different statuses. So we wanted to demystify this. And together, we organized a training session that'd be individual for employers to talk about cultural diversity in the workforce.
co-organizing events for our community. So we will be setting up kiosks together to avoid duplication of effort. There's a preparation of meals, sometimes African meals. Our friends here also participated. And then the next picture here I want to show you is a show for a musical piece, and it's called Africana. And these are students from University of Hearst, also with settlement services clients, and our current students from Western Africa. And they were singing together, and they were able to also do some fundraising activities for the students of the program. And then we have experiential learning. We work together to offer internships for Hearst University students within settlement services so that we can offer direct services within the community. And then we share resources between the various organizations. That could be training on the specificities of a labor market, cultural sensitivity, and so on. Direct services, well, this one is easy to understand. So Hearst University students, sometimes they get their permanent residency or their refugee services status, so they can then access settlement services. And then support for regional services. We often sit on the same committees, where there be on the Northern Network or other organizations. So we try to focus on community activities, whether it be collaboration at regional level with work, trade fairs, and other activities. We often work together. And then there's other collaborations. Innovenor has offers TEF services to Hearst University students. And we also share IT services and finance services. So we are in the same sandbox, but we also operate separately. But we try to collaborate as much as possible. Once again, we collaborate with La Rive du Nord. It's kind of a triangle between our three organizations. So Settlement Services, Hearst University, and the Réseau du Nord, Northern Network. We try to work together without duplicating our efforts and also taking full benefit of each of our strengths. So a bit of challenges related to collaboration with the settlement sector. On that, I would like to share 3 challenges. First of all, eligibility of Hearst University students. Sometimes they're not eligible to those services. And then competition for housing. We're in a small community. There's a housing shortage, competition for resources. And third challenge, confusion between our organizations in the eyes of the public. I myself get confused sometimes when I'm presenting our 3 organizations. A promising practice upcoming is the pilot project for the Francophone minority communities. This project was identified by IRCC. They had identified our university as a potential institution that can play a role in this initiative. And we were approved because we organically collaborate between all these organizations and also the proximity to settlement services. And to conclude, I would like to share that sometimes we don't have a choice in northeastern Ontario. We need to collaborate with others. One, because we are very close, we run into them at the grocery store. And secondly, the success of each of our organizations depends heavily on these partnerships and collaboration. Sometimes alone, we can't offer all of the services, but together we can offer the full gamut of services. So I had to go quite quickly, and I did it in French. Maybe not everyone understood all the nuances, but hopefully you are inspired to work together and to collaborate with the partners that are around you in your region, because for me and Hearst University, together we can rethink your universe. And this is our slogan, actually, at the university, to rethink your universe together. Thank you so much for listening to me, and thank you to the organizers of the event. Even though we're far away, we have things to share. We want you to get to know us, and thank you so much for the interpreters as well to allow me to speak in French.
Brady is next.
Thanks, Anthony. Hello, everybody. As Beth said, I'm Brady Chanel. I'm an Economic Development Officer with the City of Medicine Hat. I want to thank the hosts and sponsors and the volunteers, and especially all of you fabulous people for making my first Pathways to Prosperity conference a really memorable and worthwhile event, so thank you. I'm grateful to be here on Canada's West Coast. I have a lot of family in Vancouver and on Vancouver Island, in Victoria and Nanaimo. I have family in Squamish and Whistler. But I'm a visitor, however. I'm born and raised in Alberta. I spent most of my time in small communities under 5,000 people. I've worked in local or municipal government for more than 10 years, and since 2019, it's been my pleasure to work very closely with immigrant-serving agencies like Calgary Catholic Immigrant Society, the Lethbridge LIP, and the Medicine Hat LIP. Pilot programs like IRCC's Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot and the more recent Alberta Rural Renewal Stream have resulted in local government working more closely with immigrant-serving agencies. I operated the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot in the town of Claresholm for more than 3 years, and now I'm responsible for operating the Rural Renewal Immigration Pathway in Southeast Alberta. I'm eager to hear an announcement about the upcoming Rural and Community Immigration Pilot, so if anybody has any information, please let me know. Now I live and work in the city of Medicine Hat in the southeast corner of Alberta. This time I was able to fly from Medicine Hat Regional Airport. If you drove from here, it would take you about 15 hours. So, Anthony, 15 hours, but that's from Vancouver to southeast Alberta. I've done that a few times, but thankfully I didn't have to do it this time. Medicine Hat's located on Treaty 7 territory, traditional lands of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, and Ojibwa people, homelands of the Métis Nation. The Samas Teepee in Medicine Hat is the largest in the world, and it stands above a sacred Indigenous archaeological site of the Northern Plains. With 330 days of sunshine, Medicine Hat is the most sunny city in Canada. Just recently, the Living Wage Network reported Medicine Hat as the most affordable city in Alberta for the second year in a row. You can buy a home in Medicine Hat for under $400,000. Yeah. Oh. Well, in fact, it was this milestone in my life that helped me realize something. Good fences make good neighbors. The saying comes from a poem by Robert Frost. The poem explores the concept of boundaries, tradition, and human interaction. Good fences make good neighbors conveys the idea that healthy boundaries, whether they're physical, emotional, or social, or political, are essential for maintaining good relationships. It acknowledges that walls and limits can help protect relationships, and that it's important to balance that with openness and communication. Look at this one. It must have been here for a long time. Does anybody want to ring the doorbell? Not me. If we get past the gate and speak to the staff and submit the proper forms and wait the appropriate amount of time, we might get a meeting in 2 or 3 weeks. This might be a perception or even some of your experience with working with government. But I'm kidding slightly, of course. Government isn't so bad. When we examine this wall, it might be reasonable to expect a formal culture, values of tradition, set procedures to follow. And if there's no procedure, you can look forward to multiple levels of approval, which takes time, right? The committee meets once per month, and that was yesterday. Sorry. You can look, as we've seen, recent political shifts can affect the public perception and can affect the priorities of government. So finding common ground with the owner of this wall might be difficult. Maybe we start with a welcome sign or a mural to add a little color. This looks more approachable. The gate is open. I bet you if we ring the bell, they will invite us inside. The yard is diverse. People are coming and going. They're even open on evenings and weekends if you ask nicely. This might be a perception or an experience we've had with settlement services. We might anticipate a more informal culture, more personalized interactions, consideration for individual needs. Building relationships is an important part of the process. But this fence is not free of barriers. It's still a fence. There's admin hurdles like compliance and reporting, and eligibility can be challenging for all of us at times. There might be limited staff or spikes in demand, but it's met with a willingness to sacrifice personal time for supporting your clients. In my experience, client confidentiality made sharing information for reporting purposes a challenge. This more intensive, individualized support might not be in alignment with the previous fence owner or some local governments. Oop, I forgot to hit that button for you guys, folks. Sorry about that. So, how can we make progress while avoiding frustration or embarrassment, right? Public engagement, like a focus group or a survey, can help start the conversation with local government. Using research and case studies strengthens the credibility. Data-driven, results-focused, we're always asking ourselves, well, what are the outcomes of this? Teaming up with other community organizations and local champions can amplify the movement. In smaller communities, engaging with elected officials on an informal level can really be an effective way to start that conversation and get it introduced into the government's conversations. Present a solution or an opportunity that aligns with government. Take the time to learn the community's mission, their vision, their core values, and their strategic plan. Establishing regular meetings and sharing information through all the channels that are available can lead to better results and a long-term relationship. I want to share an example that's close to my heart. Claresholm is a southern Alberta community of just 4,000 people. Actually, home of Louise McKinney, the first woman to sit in British legislature in Canada. Louise is one of the famous 5 women of Canada to fight for women's rights and have them recognized as persons under law. And she was born and raised in Claresholm. Claresholm's a service hub for smaller surrounding communities, and working closely with Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, we were able to create something that was truly Claresholm. Welcoming Claresholm is more than a brand. It's now a committee of local volunteers. It's a commitment by the community to diversity, equity, and inclusion for all residents. It's a big part of Canada Day, and it's a support network for the newcomers within Claresholm. In 2022, Economic Developers Alberta recognized Welcoming Claresholm as an award-winning initiative. So our local government, we had a motivation to support our employers and grow the community. Claresholm invested in an economic development officer, and that was the doorway for the immigration and settlement conversation to take place. Not every community will have economic development. You might consider the Chamber of Commerce as another place to start a conversation in a small town. There are chambers operating the Rural Northern Immigration Project pilot right here in BC, in Vernon and the West Kootenays. The town had an existing capacity and long-standing relationships in the community. We had dedicated economic staff and elected officials that saw it as something that they wanted to get involved with. We also had a place where people could gather, and we had equipment to hold online meetings, which were very needed during the pandemic. Settlement services, they had a desire to support newcomers and expand their services. The Calgary Catholic Immigration Society had an established rural outreach program. They had visionary staff like Ricardo Morales, who was an open doorway for our partnership. CCIS provided support for Claresholm's application to the Rural Northern Immigration Pilot, and the town in turn provided support for CCIS application to a provincial settlement grant to build community capacity to welcome and retain newcomers in Claresholm and the surrounding area. CCIS introduced me to a network of immigration services, support, and information. I discovered cultural competencies for the first time, and I was able to bring that into the town of Claresholm offices. CCIS created a diversity coordinator and an engagement coordinator to engage our community and implement the welcoming model. And together, we went through those interview processes and we hired locals that would be a good fit for the job. And this is what it looks like. New community members, lifelong residents, elected officials, settlement workers, economic development. These are the founding members of Welcoming Claresholm. Supporting business and workforce and growing our community with new young families is where we all found common ground. Now, in Medicine Hat, key pillars for our economic development strategy are workforce development, business retention, and investment attraction. I got the job opportunity because I believe in the connection between immigration settlement and community economic development. To stay healthy and prosperous, the City of Medicine Hat needs to attract new young families to the community. One way we're doing that is with the Alberta Rural Renewal Immigration Stream, which is for communities under 100,000 people. We're taking a regional approach. Together with Cypress County, the town of Redcliffe, the town of Bow Island, and the City of Medicine Hat, we are a designated community in Alberta's Rural Renewal Stream. Southeast Alberta Municipal Immigration is a regional commitment to supporting our economy and growing our communities by taking on opportunities like the Rural Renewal Stream by Alberta. We communicate regularly with 5 immigration-serving agencies, the Medicine Hat College, and other community support services to run a transparent program with integrity and transparency. So how did we get here? Well, the regional approach, as I mentioned, governance, Medicine Hat, Cypress, Redcliffe, and Bow Island have formed a steering committee of elected officials to help govern policy and procedure. Smaller communities don't always have the capacity to undertake these new programs on their own, so having municipal partnerships is a really big strength and advantage. Find the people who are open to collaborating. It might take time to find the right person within an organization to drive collaboration, but I believe they are there. So be patient and look for those champions within any group. SAMI works with Medicine Hat Local Immigration Partnership, the SAMIS Immigration and Mentorship, the Connection Intercultural Association, Community Development, and even neighboring agencies like Brooks and County Immigrant Services. We took our time to plan and design a regional program that took all stakeholders into consideration. A network of organizations and administrative framework, and what I'm most proud of with Southeast Alberta Municipal Immigration is the feedback mechanisms that we've got in place. So with that open communication from immigrant agencies and local government, the workforce, we hear things that are going on within the immigration space. International students from Medicine Hat College came forward and they were concerned, they had questions, and so we took the time to meet and listen with them before we launched the program. As I said, transparency and integrity are key. There's employers and immigration consultants who take advantage of immigration programs and immigrants. And we've established checks and balances like mandatory local job postings, a mandatory living wage, employer consultations, and a memorandum of understanding, candidate interviews, and of course our interagency group that we meet with every month. As things change, so will SAMI. So we're not afraid to make adjustments to the requirements of the program, and we will continue to evolve. And that's what this looks like. Here's my friend Siddiqui Bamparinza, who's sitting over here. Hi, Siddiqui. He's our coordinator for the Medicine Hat Local Immigration Partnership, and he's with Tracy Tewia, City of Medicine Hat coordinator for the Rural Renewal Program for Southeast Alberta. And we partnered with the Connection Intercultural Association to connect with residents during the 2024 Canada Day celebrations. I sincerely hope you found some information and my story is valuable and motivating. I really enjoy working where local government meets immigration, and I think we all have our own version of a fence. If we remember to respect each other and look for common ground, I think good things can happen. So thank you. All right. Next up is Karen Cumberland with the Canadian Centre for Substance Abuse and Addiction.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen, as he mentioned, and I'm with the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here this week. We're answering the question here today is how do we partner? And for us, I would say, if I was to put up a map here, we're on the beginning of that journey with you folks here, and we want to learn how to partner better with you and how to make our work relevant to the work that you do. And so today I'm going to walk you through my organization and hope that you can see some areas of connectivity. But before I do that, I want to ask, this is my baseline survey, how many of you have ever heard of the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction? Wow, okay. Well, then I can just go home. I could go shop. This is good. No, I'm really excited by that because I expected it to be a little bit less. So let's take a walk through the work and hope that maybe there's some new connections or richer connections that we can build. So here you see a picture that was created through an organizational-wide workshop that we undertook, where we explored our process that we've since built to really embed a distinctions-based approach to all the work that we do. And we respectfully acknowledge that the offices of the Canadian Centre on Substance Use are located on the traditional and unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. As a national organization, we also acknowledge that we work on the traditional lands of many distinct nations, including Métis and Inuit. As a Canadian, I'm the mother of 2 beautiful Métis children, but I'm also the granddaughter of 4 sets of new Canadians. My grandfather was put on a boat at the age of about 12 with, I think, $12 equivalent in his pocket. His family was facing famine in Scotland, and he was told to go make a better life. Another set of my grandparents came here. They escaped genocide in Odessa in the last century, and similarly came here with not much and made lives. And I was really taken by our speaker this morning, who summarized yesterday's group activity, and she referenced kind of the same vein where she grew up in Alberta, you know, on traditional Indigenous lands, but also has that mixed heritage within her. And I think I mention that because every day I try to model for my children, and in the work that we do, that diversity that flows within us, but also around us. And it's been really inspiring for me to be in this room today and yesterday and feel the intensity of it within you all and the work that you do. So let's talk about CCSA. CCSA was created by an act of Parliament in 1988, and really it was to provide national leadership on substance use. We work to change lives by bringing people and knowledge together to reduce the harms of alcohol and other drugs on society. We partner with public, private, and non-governmental organizations to improve the health and safety of people living in Canada. As an NGO with a national focus, we envision a healthier Canadian society where evidence transforms approaches to substance use. We are firmly rooted in science and sound methodology, and we're driven by compassion. So what do? We enable solutions related to substance use health in these 3 key areas. We are prepared and committed to serve as conveners, collaborate with communities across the country, and bridge the gap between what we know and what we do. And we try to accelerate that gap because, as many of you know, it often takes a lot of time to go into practice. So here you see our foundational requirements. Most of our teams, most of the teams within the Canadian Centre work within one of 5 streams. The first one is one of the ones that I oversee, and it's called convening communities. And this is where CCSA is positioned as that convener I mentioned just a moment ago that will drive collaboration with diverse communities and partners, build understanding of community-specific issues, and collectively define and drive meaningful responses. Another important stream is called data as power, another area that I'm quite involved in. And through this stream, CCSA is creating a national evidence base with the most up-to-date data on early warning and substance use trends in the substance use field that is unique and complementary to existing data sources, but provides the context necessary for data-driven policies and public information. And this is an area where we really, really want to partner with you. We really need to better understand the stories that are embedded within your data that can help us better relate our work to you, but also how can we enhance your current data collection. Another important stream that we do is called prevention and health promotion. This stream aids to address issues related to the prevention and health promotion for legal, psychoactive substances, and problematic gambling. We really focus a lot on alcohol and cannabis. The overarching goal is to ensure that people living in Canada experience as little harm as possible. Another stream is called the Quality and Accountability Stream. So this one, driven by the communities most affected and the health providers who care for them, the activities in this stream drive the equitable availability and accessibility of a wide spectrum of services. This stream will seek to build collaboration across the health sector with a particular focus on non-specialty services such as primary care services, emergency departments, and mental health services. And the last one I'll mention is called Innovation and Evidence in Practice. This stream is focused on developing and disseminating evidence on policies, programs, and practices to strengthen knowledge, training, services, and supports in diverse settings. So here you see a grouping of the national priorities that the streams really tailor their work towards. And I'm sure you can see some relevancy in here to different things that come up in your day-to-day work. Policymakers know that they can rely on the Canadian Centre on Substance Use to have a finger on the national pulse and provide objective, evidence-based recommendation. Our work goes beyond research. We can explain the so what on very complex issues and brief policymakers without compromising quality and impartiality. So here you see some of the CCSA's largest and most engaging projects, not only on a national scale, but internationally as well. Some of these are probably the areas where you have touched into the work of our organization. What was formerly called the Low-Risk Drinking Guidelines, now called Canada's Guidance on Alcohol and Health, have been spoken about quite a lot in national and international media dialogue and in debate. Our current advice recommends that Canadians get curious about their alcohol consumption and try to reduce it in some manner, and lays that out in different zones so that people can understand the risks that they're undertaking with their own consumption. You also see the Canadian Substance Use Cost and Harms Study. We'll be coming out with a new iteration of this in 2025. This is a very, very comprehensive and almost 30-year-old piece of work that has been evolving over time in its methodology to help us understand how certain substances impact people's productivity and in general economic activity. The workforce competencies is an area where we see clear interconnectivity with a lot of the work that you're doing. Here we have a set of technical and behavioral competencies that can be used by service providers to further enhance their connectivity with Canadians. Convening experts and communities. I'll focus for a little bit on our work with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. We develop and nurture collaborative relationships with Indigenous communities and organizations across Canada, ensuring their voices inform evidence and approaches that speak to their unique contexts. We work closely with our partners to create meaningful reconciliation initiatives and provide staff with the opportunity to reflect and identify actions for reconciliation in the organization and in their own lives. This is an area where I'd love to be able to build out our connectivity with organizations like your own. Our plans are informed by our stakeholders, and our work is executed through meaningful partnerships and collaboration. We are connected across the country to identify and act on substance use trends, generate evidence to inform programs and policies, and deliver tools and information that reflect the needs of our communities. The voices of people with lived and living experience are unique and vital. No one else can speak so meaningfully to what their experience of substance use and addiction feels like and what effect this has had on their lives and the lives of those around them. We include the participation of people with lived or living experience in the planning, delivery, and evaluation of programs, policies, services, and supports, which can help ensure a person-centered approach serves their needs. Communities across Canada. We bring together leaders, traditional and non-traditional experts, sectors, and their communities to explore intense regional and cultural differences and address the substance use crises across Canada. We convene them to ensure that innovative solutions can be shared and adapted to local realities. And again, that's what I mentioned earlier, that this is why I'm here this week, to learn, to begin to learn more and understand how we can convene and support your local realities. CCSA is recognized for its ability to convene across sectors, communities, and policy areas to promote continuity of knowledge, providing an impartial space for discussion and collaboration. During a time of very fractured political and public discourse on addiction and substance use issues, this convening power is essential to move forward. This is why we play a vital role in the ecosystem and are prepared to do more. Complementing our scientific and technical work, we integrate community-based solutions and priorities informed by different communities across the country. This means our work is representative of lived realities and can have tangible applications. We are committed to working with marginalized communities in research, policy discussion, knowledge dissemination, and program development. Some of our recent events are listed here, ranging from alcohol to cannabis prevention. Happy to chat more with any of you about these activities in days to come and help you understand what are the next steps related to these most recent efforts to convene. I'm just going to share with you our most recent event, the Timmins Summit, not far from Hearst. How many hours? 3 hours from Hearst. In September, we brought together mayors and other city officials from small to mid-sized cities. So those are cities between 50 and 150K. We brought these officials together with public health experts, industry and natural resource representatives, service providers, settlement organizations. And through this process, which we're just embarking on, we're actually taking this group of officials to Lethbridge, Alberta in April. Really happy to chat how we can connect with your organizations. And we're working towards a pan-Canadian playbook of approaches and solutions that can be customized to local regions. One of my last slides here is a bit of a shameful promotion, but also a huge welcome to any of you who are interested in submitting abstracts or getting engaged in our in our national conference, which is called Issues of Substance. It's going to take place this time next year in Halifax. And I know there's many of you representing the East Coast here. I'm from the East Coast as well, and we'd love to see you there. We'd love to see your research there, and we'd love to involve you in this amazing convening opportunity. This biennial event is Canada's only national conference that brings together addiction workers, healthcare professionals, researchers, policymakers, knowledge brokers, and people with direct or indirect living experience with substance use or a substance use disorder from across Canada. So I'm just going to wrap up by thanking Melanie Bailey, who's on the program committee. I don't think Melanie's here this week, but she put my name forward. And Melanie and I did some great work together in Prince Edward Island. She represents Immigration Refugee Services Alliance, and she is one of the tireless champions that is out there in rural and remote Canada doing the work to drive your priorities forward. And I'm so grateful for her to put my name forward to be a part of this. And I just want to really welcome you to reach out to me. I'll connect you with members of my team, and I'm just really grateful for your time today and looking forward to engaging with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if we can pull up the Slido questions. Oh, we've got a few that have already come in. So we're going to just jump right into them, I think, just for the sake of time. Let's see, the first question. Oh, they're jumping. This is a trick. Okay. Seeing the very high financial impact of addictions, does CCSA support the decriminalization of all recreational drug use? This would be helpful in many ways, including reducing interactions between newcomers and police. Is that something that you are able to speak on? We did talk about wanting to keep focus on this population. Is this something you can comment on?
I think that one might be a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
To get into here today.
Okay, so we're going to skip to Anthony because I see one geared towards you, Anthony. Would your model work in larger communities? It seems very efficient. And you've got that in French, but I'm going to spare you my accent. But Anthony, would you like to comment on that?
Alors la question c'était
The question, does our model work in larger communities? Well, this is a great question. We haven't really seen a similar model elsewhere, maybe some similarities, but our model comes from our resourcefulness to working in this particular environment where we are, where there are fewer available services, where we are francophone in a minority situation, where we are in a rural area far from larger centers. So our model is born from there. So we needed to have flexible structures and motivated people. We're thankful that we're able to work with these motivated people, and that is a luxury. But to answer your question, I'd say, why not? Why not try? So let's remain and keep the flexibility. And our environment is not the same as yours, most likely, but you can try. And if you have any questions about our model, send me a message or come and see me. Thank you.
Karen, this might be a better question as well for you, because in this room you've got a lot of lips represented and a lot of people with connections. So from a mobilization perspective, how can we better support that work?
So I think that's a wonderful question and so relevant to what we're talking about here today. So in order to engage, I think it's just really important for us to start that conversation with you. There's so many areas of work that we're undertaking and different national committees that we have where we would really welcome the involvement and the voice of this community at that table. Any of the things that I mentioned today could really benefit from that involvement. And I think at the more local level, we have a network called Sendu, where we have sites of organizations that are gathering data at that local level, and there isn't a rich involvement yet of data from more local settlement-serving organizations. So that would be an amazing area. So we can go local all the way up to national. I mentioned folks with lived and living experience. We have something called the Collective, which we would really welcome engagement on. And when it comes to alcohol and cannabis, we have committees and opportunities to get involved. But we're also constantly coming out with roundtables and meetings. And so let us know you're interested, and we'll start reaching out.
Thank you. And Brady, I'm not surprised to see this question coming for you as well. Again, you're working across multiple municipalities and in different economies, and I know many of us in the room are always thinking about how can we better work with employers, so would love to hear from you what's been the most effective messaging that you've found in creating buy-in with employers.
Well, to be totally honest, when the rural northern immigration pilot was announced in Claresholm, there was a lot of publicity, and we didn't have to really work too hard. For employers and workers were lining up. Here in Medicine Hat with the rural renewal, we are about 18 months behind other communities rolling it out. So again, we had 120 employers sign up in the first 2 weeks in the Medicine Hat region. So I think the message really got to employers from the workforce. I think the temporary workforce were ones who were real drivers to connect with their employers. But some of the strategies we did, we put on a lot of Rural Renewal 101, Immigration 101 sessions. I was surprised at how many misconceptions there really were, that all newcomers have social support or financial support. Just talking to residents and employers about economic immigration and the requirements for workers through economic immigration, I think changed a lot of hearts and minds. Just that basic information. Here's how immigration in Canada works. Here's how provincial nomination programs work. Here's this program we're operating, and here's the requirements to meet it. And so it wasn't a magical, concoction, but really just education, I think, was a big part of it.
Yeah, that certainly resonates with some of what we've heard as we've done work across the country as well. Patricia, there was a question that was up earlier for you that I wondered if you might want to comment on as well, because it was around your Swiss model and the differences that we may see with some of the other models across the country. Would you like to comment on that?
Oui, merci. Donc, je veux juste ramener.
I was comparing our service to the services that I know in BC. So services where, well, maybe our reality is different. The type of refugees that we welcome, the immigrants. So I didn't want to minimize the other services that exist. I just want to say that we adapt to the demands and the needs of our families. So I'd be very pleased to speak with people who are in this situation in another province, in a minority situation, francophone minority situation, so that we could compare and we could exchange with each other and share resources. Thank you.
Just to know, I know we're getting close on time, but just to sort of wrap us up, I'm going to use a bit of moderator privilege, I think, if I can. And one of the things I think just in terms of this conversation, it's been wonderful presentations, and I thank our panelists for sharing their work with us and giving us another perspective. I think we're all probably taking away from this conversation that we're all going to check out Medicine Hat at the end and see what it takes to live there. And I think I've also taken away that Hearst has a terrific marketing team and comes up with some of the best little taglines. But I also want to ask our panelists as well, as you are thinking about closing out the session, you know, if you had a wish for this audience of what you want them to take away from your conversation today, I'd like to give you each a chance just to share that back. And maybe if we'll start with you and then work down the line as well. What would you like this audience to take away from the conversation?
On est ici pour parler de.
We're here to talk about collaboration. We need to strengthen our capacity to work together. In BC, we have great Francophone, Anglophone partners, and I could name them, but it would take much too long. But it's about strengthening our capacity building to support all of these families who are arriving and to make our environment much more beneficial, caring. I'd say something similar. Well, we're here to talk about partnerships and collaboration. What I would say, though, is go see the community partners. Go see these agencies. Go to them. Speak with them. Talk to them. There are surprises, and sometimes we learn quite a bit. We learn who does what. You know, it's important to know what organization has what mandate. So at one point or another, we will see that by discussing with something, we'll be able to solve something, to solve a little issue. So that is something that we have observed when we conducted consultations. We have the opportunity to bring key actors together from the field. And the fact alone to bringing people together before a presentation, that communication, and people are like, oh, you do that, I do that. Well, maybe you can help me with that. And I have a hard time with this or that. Well, of course, Julie over there takes care of that, so you can work with her. So go speak to the people and open that conversation.
Merci.
Yeah, I think the takeaway for me is meet people where they're at, you know, organizations and people. Different organizations have different cultures, and then even people within that organization are going to have different attitudes. And one of the mistakes, or one of the challenges we faced early on is we were so eager to formalize everything, to make it official. Let's get motions, let's get terms of reference, let's have minutes and agendas. And I was thinking back to the Welcoming Claresholm Committee. And when we first initiated, we had 20 plus, almost 30 members, but it was those agendas and minutes and terms of reference and debate over, is this for newcomers and new residents or just newcomers? And after a few months, we were down to just 5 members. And we looked around and there was no newcomers in the room anymore. And so we had to go back to an informal approach. Barbecues, attending local events together, and maybe even going out and volunteering instead of having a meeting, and it made a big difference.
Again, meeting people where they're at. Yeah.
Meeting people where they're at.
Okay, and Karen, would you like to close us out?
I love that. So I think what we should maybe highlight is that there was great intention with me going last after these folks that represent such important sectors. We wanted to point out that we acknowledge that nobody can undertake in the economy or education if they're not well. And so what I would love to leave you with is a deep desire by my organization, and I think organizations in general in my field, to better understand the stories that are woven within the work that you do, of how people are doing and what their needs are. We know that people use substances in a different way in different cultures. They talk about them in different ways. I need you to help my organization understand that so that we can connect with you where you're at, as you know, as the panel has said. So that would be the last thought I'd love to leave you with is come and tell us your story.
Great. And I think a call for action for all of us to rethink the universe and who's in it, right? And how do we collaborate together? So thank you for your time this afternoon. Please, round of applause for everyone on the panel, and have a great rest of the afternoon.